Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to TRB AMS 50 Economic Development and Land Use webinar series for month of October. Today, we will be exploring the topic of TODs in the Global South. The committee chairs include Noreen McDonald and Michael Lawrence. These webinar series are moderated by Professor Jason Kao of University of Minnesota and myself, Elham Shikari. I'm PhD candidate at Florida State. The committee scope of AMS 50 Economic Development and Land Use focuses on impacts of transportation on the economy, environment, and society. It is concerned with efficient, effective, and equitable transportation systems that promote competitive advantage, economic resiliency, and sustainability for our cities, regions, and societies. This committee provides a cross-cutting forum for practitioners and researchers to understand the interrelationship between transportation, economic development, and the economy and land use, and policies and management to create sustainable growth at national, regional, and local scales. In order to become a friend of this committee, please log into MyTRB at www.mytrb.org. Go to committees, click on Become a Friend of a Committee, find AMS 50 and click on Become a Friend. That way you will be notified of future webinars and future events. In order to raise questions throughout the webinar, please type your questions in the chat section or raise your hand virtually and we will unmute you. Please also take a look at our last webinar. The title was High-Speed Rail Impacts on CO2 Emissions and Social Inclusion. Our speakers were Dr. Hangjun Yang from University of International Business and Economics, Beijing, China, and Dr. Frederic Dobrusks from Université Libre de Bruxelles, Belgium. And you can find that on our YouTube channel. You can find that by searching for TRB AMS 50. And with that, I will introduce our first speaker for today. Our first speaker is Mr. Hamidur Rahman. He is a master's student in the Department of Earth Sciences at the University of Memphis, USA. He completed a bachelor's degree in urban and regional planning from the Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology with a concentration in transportation planning and geographic information science. He gained experience in the field of GIS Automation and Geo-Spatial Analytics while working as GIS Assistant at the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center in Bangladesh for 2 years. Rahman's research interest is on linking built environment with transportation outcomes, i.e. travel mode choice, spatial accessibility of urban facilities, and vehicular carbon emission in the developing country context. So with that, Mr. Rahman, please, the mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilham. Good morning, everyone. So now I'm going to share my screen. I think I need to have the option to able to share my screen. It's showing that host disabled the participant screen share.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you try now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can do it now. So can you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you everyone for being here. And I'm really glad to be able to present this paper to you all today. So I'm going to talk about one of my recent paper published in Transport Research Part D, which is about investigating the impact of transit-oriented development on transport-related carbon dioxide emissions. So those who are interested can check the full paper from the journal site. Here's the full citation. Before starting, I'd like to give you a short background of myself. I'm Hamidur Rahman. I completed my bachelor from Bangladesh University of Engineering Technology in 2018, and then I moved to the United States for my master's program here. And my research interest, as as Elham already said, that linking built environment to travel behavior with the application of GIS. So for this paper, I also want to acknowledge my two of the co-authors, Mr. Falder Abi, who is also a graduate student currently doing his master's at McGill University, and also Dr. Leighton Kamruzzaman, who is an associate professor at Monash University, Australia. So to begin with, I want to give you a short background of this research. Here you can see that the overall scenario of global greenhouse gas emissions by transport sector. Globally, the transport sector is accounting for 22% of energy-related carbon emission. And of these 22%, around 74% of carbon emissions are coming from road transport. So there is a need of studying how our daily mobility through different road transportation is actually affecting the carbon emission levels. And we know that the cities are the main place for global carbon emissions because most of the energy consuming economic activities take place in cities. And beside that, there has been an increasing trend in automobile ownership, and thus transport sector is experiencing an increasing trend in carbon dioxide emissions. So far, different policies have been adopted to curb down the emission level. So for example, modal shifts, which is making people transfer from private mode to active modes, improving the fuel efficiency of vehicles, and also there are some demand management strategies out there. So as an urban development strategy, TOD are actually characterized by moderate to high density, well-connected street network, diverse land use patterns, and it's actually centered on high frequency transit stop or stations that enable access to destination elsewhere with relative ease. So this paper actually shed light on the potential of how TOD as an urban development strategy might affect trip level carbon dioxide emissions. So we also look back to the existing literature. So far, researchers have studied how built environment can affect carbon emissions separately. Some built environment affects positively, while some of them might have a negative effect on carbon emissions. And the relationship varies between different trip types. Also, there are some methodological challenges in terms of measuring techniques of built environment and studying the interaction effect. And also, on the other hand, there are a handful of research being conducted how TOD might actually affect the social interaction, economic viability, property values, and quality of life. So in light of this, there is a scant literature studying the built environment on carbon emission in developing country contexts, so especially in the cities of Global South. And also there is no recent literature that studies the potential of TOD on carbon emission. So the research hypothesis is that we hypothesize that TODs have the potential to reduce travel-related CO2 emissions. So the two specific research objectives that we tried to obtain from this are, first of all, to identify the TOD neighborhoods that are a joint outcome of a range of built environment measures that have traditionally been identified to have inconclusive effects on carbon dioxide emissions. And secondly, to examine the carbon dioxide emissions reduction potential of TODs. So the study is based on Dhaka city, which is the capital of Bangladesh, and it's actually developed organically. So there is lots of unplanned and haphazard development in the city. If you see the demography here, Dhaka city has a population of around 6.9 million with a density of 517 persons per hectare, which is quite high in terms of other global cities. And you can see the modal share composition as well here. And you can see that public transport is a significant mode along with other non-motorized transport. But the share of private mode is comparatively lower compared to developed countries. The built environment here as a global, global South cities here, the built environment is actually unique. You can see that the density is really high here, and the road network doesn't have any proper hierarchies. And there is a spatial mismatch between the jobs and housing here. And most importantly, there is an upward trend in private car and motorcycle ownership here in the Dhaka city as well. And overall, this city is one of the most 5 climate vulnerable cities in the world. And so that's the reason we actually choose this study area. So here you can see the traffic composition. I just provided a picture here. Like this picture was taken in weekends. So there is not much traffic in the roads, but you can see that the private car, public bus, rickshaw, which is a traditional mode here, and also motorcycle lying on the roads. But the situation is quite different during the peak hour time. So you can see that there is an unusual traffic congestion during the peak hour. And this is a typical weekday scenario in Dhaka city in different parts of the parts of the city. So the city is actually more prone to traffic congestion. So getting into the data for this study, we primarily used household interview survey data for from the revised strategic transport plan. And this plan was conducted by Dhaka Transportation Coordination Authority in 2014. And they did a household interview survey, which is a primary survey. And then they collected the information at traffic analysis zone level or TAZ level. And the respondents were asked about their socio-demographic and trip records. So we used that data for counting the carbon emission level at individual. So this is the 90 TAZ we are considered for this study. So we measured the built environment at TAZ level, and also the revised strategic transport plan identified traffic analysis zone as the intervention unit for TODs. So the descriptive statistics were shown to compare whether the sample is representative of the wider population of Dhaka city. And the study sample actually confirmed that our sample is quite resembles the wider population of the Dhaka city. And I'm not going to details on this table now. You can check it out on the full paper on the website. So we computed a total of 5 built environment indicators at TAZ level, and to classify the neighborhoods as TOD or non-TOD. And you can see that the density, diversity, design, public transit accessibility, and spatial accessibility to facilities were considered as built environment indicators for the study. And then we used a 2-step clustering process to categorize the TAZs into 2 different types. So in the figure, you can see that based on the 5 built environment indicators, and based on their mean values, they are actually categorized into 2 different typologies. And in the chart, you can see that the top neighborhoods have higher job housing ratio values, better spatial accessibility to facility, better road network connectivity measured by link node ratio, and higher land use diversity, and as well as residential density. We also validated the result of top typologies by travel distance and land value data. So independent sample t-test results shows that the statistically significant differences in both travel distance and property values, and thus confirming that TOD neighborhoods have on average a longer distance, like residents living in TOD neighborhoods have shorter travel distance, and also the land value is higher in TOD neighborhoods. So we measured the carbon emissions from road transport at the individual level using the following equation. And for modes, we considered public transit, private vehicles as private car, motorcycle, and microbus, and also active transport. So we know that the emission factor may vary by modes according to the amount and type of fuel they used. So this study adapted both percentage of fuel use and the emission factor. And also we included the occupancy of different modes to reinforce our method of carbon dioxide emission, so which is overlooked in the recent literature. And the consideration of occupancy enables us to robustly identify the transport-related emissions at the individual level. Because the data was at two levels, we used multi-level modeling technique for 3 different types of trips. And the few statistics are also checked, like intra-class correlation coefficient, to check the spatial dependency and heterogeneity of the outcome. And also we included an autocovariate variables to control for spatial autocorrelation. And to calculate that variable, we used incremental spatial autocorrelation tools of our GIS. And also we checked the multi-currency issue through variance inflation factor. So these are the equations for the analytical models, and I'm not going to, again, detailing on these, but they are in the full paper. So the two-step clustering process provided us with the typologies of neighborhoods. You can see that around 40% of TAZs are actually categorized as TOD, and the rest of them as non-TOD, and their location is actually showing that TOD areas have higher levels of transit, and also they are located in the central part of the city, and non-TOD neighborhoods are in the periphery or in outskirts of the city. So getting into the result of the model, here you can see that after controlling for the socio-demographic and spatial relationships, the level of carbon dioxide emissions were significantly lower for residents in TODs compared to non-TODs. So our hypothesis was substantiated and held by the result here. And also the spatial parameters were found to be statistically significant, which indicates that the emission level of individual differ across neighborhoods, but have a smaller pattern for those who are living in the same TAD. So this finding justify use of a multi-level modeling framework here. And all the explanatory variables are found to have low VIF scores, so that this indicating that there is no multi-collinearity problem among the variables here. And also the autocovariate variable is not significant at the 95% level. And this is implying that residents' transportation-related CO2 emissions were not significantly affected by the emission level in neighboring traffic analysis zones. And in terms of the control of socio-demographics, you can see that the household size has an inverse relationship with carbon dioxide emission for all types of trips. And also the age is positively associated with carbon dioxide emissions. And these findings actually suggesting that the largest sized households and young residents are more supportive of the environmental policy of TODs, as they emit less carbon dioxide emissions for all types of trips. And also here you can see the standardized, coefficient for the variables of the socio-demographic, like car ownership, household income, and the availability of driving license play a more substantial role in affecting the transport-related carbon dioxide emission. So if I summarize the main findings, we found that TODs have the efficacy to reduce carbon dioxide emission for work and school trips, however, not for the non-work trip. And also the socio-demographics have a greater effect on carbon dioxide emissions than the neighborhood types, whether it's TOD or non-TOD. And based on that, the thought planning framework should accommodate policies and strategies, like considering all the types of trips rather than focusing only work purpose trips. And we have several limitations for this research. So first of all, we used a cross-sectional data. So if we had a longitudinal data, we could have tested the causality between TODs and carbon dioxide emission. Second, we didn't consider the vehicular speed while measuring the emission. So it might also get incorporated in future research. third, we partially accounted for the residential self-selection because we didn't have the data for the preference and attitude of residents in RSTP survey. And also, we also want to acknowledge that the pattern of emissions generated from the other sources like industry and commerce might be different between TOD and non-TOD. So future research can also incorporate the land use, different other land uses which generate carbon dioxide emissions. So with that, I'm going to conclude, and thank you all again for listening. If you have further questions, you can reach me out to this email.
I'm the Hamidur, and this is a very interesting presentation. And I have one question is regarding your definition of the TOD. Apparently the results, depends on the definition of TOD. And then I found out, about 40% of the TAZs are classified TOD, and then 60% is non-TOD. Is this kind of predetermined proportion, or that's really based on some kind of analysis you get this number?
No, we use this two-step clustering process, and we actually tried with different levels of outcome, and the overall model quality actually get improved when we use that two different level. So the model was in fair quality, and we took the outcome and classified the traffic analysis zone as TOD and non-TOD for that reason. I hope I answered your questions.
In our audience, do you have any questions? Yes.
Hello.
Hi. Solid work. A couple of quick questions. One is in your final outcome table, I see you control the social demographic characteristics. What's not clear to me is to what extent you control other location characteristics. You differentiate the zones into TOD, non-TOD, but I suspect that those TOD zones have features, location features that are correlated with the TOD, but they are different from TOD per se. So that's question number one. Question number two, I'm just curious, in terms of the coefficient you estimated, like 0.04, if I remember, what does that really mean?
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Shen, for the questions. Let me go to the screen here so that I can better answer your. So in terms of your first question, the spatial dependency and spatial heterogeneity issue were actually controlled by the autocovariate statistics here. And because, as you have said, that the TOD and non-TOD characteristics might vary within and across the traffic analysis zone. So that's the reason we actually introduced an autocovariate parameter here. And in terms of second question, can you just repeat the second question?
Yes, the second question was simply about the estimated beta coefficient. What does that tell you?
Okay, so here the beta coefficient for the different variables is actually showing us that if an increase in the outcome of the independent variables occurs, then what will be the outcome for the carbon emissions level here? Mm-hmm. So an unit increase in carbon ownership will actually result in higher levels of carbon dioxide emissions as found from this study, because it was a linear association between these two variables. So yeah.
Yeah, that I know, but the TOD variable, right? You
Yeah.
with reference as non-TOD, which is in the right direction, minus 0.004.
Yeah.
But what does that?
Oh, okay.
mean?
So yeah, considering like this location of non-TOD. So if residents live in non-TOD, so as it was a binary variable here, so so the residents who live in TOD neighborhoods compared to non-TODs have lower level of emission for home to work purpose trip and home to school purpose trip, because the negative sign you can see here. And for the home to non-work trip, that was not statistically significant, and it has although it has a like positive association between these two variables.
I think Professor Shen's question is regarding the size of that coefficient. What does that mean? Is that about 40 grams of the carbon dioxide, or that's 40 kilograms?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Sorry. So the carbon emission level we estimated here, if I go to the supplementary file, so it was the gram per kilometer. So we actually use different for different modes. We had different levels of carbon emission factor. So in total, it gave us in gram value of carbon dioxide emission.
So that means in the TOD area, if you live in the TOD area, actually only reduce by 0.04 gram.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really tiny.
Okay.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I think Professor Shen raised a very good question. When we try to explain the results, not just about the direction of the influence and the significance of the variable, but also what does that really mean? So that means that we are talking about the practical importance of that coefficient. We need to interpret the size of that coefficient.
Yeah, and I just checked this equation here. So the factor was in gram, but our output variables, the carbon emission at individual level, it was in kilogram, not in kg, so not in grams. So I apologize for the previous response.
Okay.
So it does about 40 gram. So if you take the coefficient value of 0.04 and multiply it by 1,000, so it will be in gram.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm the Hamidur, and now I'm going to present the second part of the webinar. And our second speaker is Professor Fenglong Wang. And Fenglong is a professor in the School of Geography and the Vice Director of the Center of Administrative Division and Spatial Governance in South China Normal University. He gained his PhD degree in Hong Kong Baptist University and worked in the East China Normal University for 5 years. And his research focused on geography of subjective well-being, including travel satisfaction, residential mobility, housing differentiation, and some theories in political geography, such as politics of scale. He had published more than 90 peer-reviewed journal articles and 6 books, 1 monograph. He's also a member of the Behavioral Geography Committee, Geographical Society of China. And Professor Wang's presentation topic is the travel, equity, and well-being impacts of TOD in Global South. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Cao. It's really my honor to be here to share with you some of my findings. Actually, it's mainly a review article. And this study was collaborated with one of my students, Yu Ya Zheng, and 2 professors, Wen Jie Wu and Donggen Wang. So this presentation have 4 parts. First, I will try to frame the research question. before we get started, I think maybe we can first provide an overview of the definition of transit-oriented development. Well, I think most of you may know that this term was first proposed by Peter Kalsup, but after years of development, I think the meaning has become plural. I think at least there are 4 different meanings when we discussing this term. The first one is mainly about the TOD as a planning model and emphasizing the compact and mixed land use. The second one is mainly about a transportation policy, just like the last lecture, I think mainly focus on, and it's considered as a strategy to encourage usage of non-motorized transport. The third one is about inclusionary and relatively cheap way to connect the socially marginalized household to some urban opportunities. And also it is considered as a financial instrument to capture the land value and promote urban development. I will focus some of these, cover some of these definitions of the TOD, as you may see in the following presentation. So there's already box of studies on TOD, and I think this studies mainly focus on 2 themes. One is about the evaluation of its impacts, and the other one is about the how to improve the policy design of the TOD. Just as Jimmy provided a word cloud of the studies on TOD, I think we can divide these key words into 2 parts. One is related to the policy, like the planning, the environment issues, the parking, and also the design. And the other one is mainly about the impacts, like behavior, like the income, like choice, or even land value. But I think the second one is also the topic I would like to address in this study. But I think there are 2 research gaps in the current studies on TOD. One is that there were much fewer studies conducted in Global South. And the second one is relatively fewer scholarly interests have been paid on the impacts of TOD on individuals and society compared with land use and planning. Related to the first research gap, why should they study TOD in Global South? I think one reason is that Global South may have some unique context, and I think these are some examples. For example, many cities in Global South, especially Asian cities, they already have higher density. So the story may be quite different from the aims of TOD in regions like North America. And second, the patterns of transportation systems and car ownerships may be also different. For example, fueled by the rapid urbanization and the rising income, many cities in the developing countries, both the car ownership and the TOD are increasing at the same time. And thirdly, the social structure and the property right systems may also be distinct. For example, in China, we have quite a powerful government, and so it is very common for many municipal government to adopt TOD as an instrument to finance suburbanization and urban sprawl. So I think we have some need to particularly focus on the studies of Global South. So we conduct an overview of the existing studies. We have compared the preliminary bibliography database using Google Scholar. The searching phrases mainly include the region, topic, and the source of journal. These journals are mainly about the transportation journals, and the keywords for region, we mainly include Global South, developing countries, and some typical countries, which have much more studies on TOD than other countries. And for the keywords of impacts, we mainly include gentrification, social equity, car use, travel behavior, sanitary function, and subject well-being. We also shrinked the database by browsing the titles, abstract, and the full text. So finally, 53 empirical papers were identified and entered in the review process. This is some of the information about the process for retrieval. So these studies mainly started from 2005 and increased rapidly in the recent decade. And the studies are mainly from China, Colombia, Brazil, South Africa, and also Thailand, and also including some other countries in Global South. So the following part, I will briefly summarize the major findings of these studies. The first is related to the social impacts, especially the TOD-induced gentrification. So TOD-induced gentrification is an emerging topic in transportation research in the recent decade, but most of the studies are focusing on global north. So according to our search, I think the major findings are generally support that TOD has to some extent lead to gentrification. For example, some studies found that the TOD has been associated with increase in the income levels and also proportion of apartment residents in the station areas, and also some industrial upgrading has been found in terms of low-end industries being replaced by the high-end ones. And we can imply that the inner city areas are dominated by the crowding out effects, and the newly developed areas were mainly led by the concentration of residents with higher profiles. The other major topic is related to social inequality. This current studies generally suggest that TOD has some uneven impacts on the accessibility for different social groups. Some suggest that low-income groups' accessibility is more sensitive to the operation of public transit. However, some other studies imply that the poorest groups are excluded from the TOD, probably because they even have not enough income to pay the costs. And also the TOD related inequality may depend on the level of development and the local context. For example, in some Indian cities, the mass transit may not be the cheapest travel mode. So TOD may not their best choice. And in some Chinese cities, the burden of rising housing value may overweigh the reduction in travel cost. This is related to the TOD induced gentrification. And according to the for the behavioral impacts, many studies have examined how TOD influence car use. The studies generally showed that TOD has negative impacts on car ownership. However, there are also evidence that this linkage was mixed. For example, some studies indicate that living in the TOD area may curb the car use, but others found no effects. There are also inconsistent findings on effects of TOD on the car usage. And this may be caused by the different measures or different indicators. For example, TOD may be associated with lower mileage, but not necessarily fewer driving trips, because some may still drive for some short trips. There are also some studies focusing on the influence of TOD on travel behavior in general. They generally support that TOD has positive effects on the travel mode choice of public transit. For example, several studies indicate that residents living or working within the TOD area are more likely to use transit as their commuting modes. And also accessibility to transit stations is positively associated with the likelihood of transit ridership. There are also some studies based on the indicators of land use, like the 3Ds or 5Ds, just as Rahman just used, and also some used the indicators of TOD-ness. I will not discuss the findings in detail. The third one is about the psychological impacts, especially on subjective well-being. although in studies of travel scientific function, people using public transit generally show the lower travel scientific function levels, but TOD as a well-defined transit area, it's generally associated with a more comfortable traveling experience, and thus has a positive effects on both travel scientific function and the general subject well-being, and shown by Professor Cao, as BRT and metro travelers tend to report higher level of travel scientific function than those traveling by ordinary buses. And also there are some evidence that the distance from residence to the transit station was negatively associated with travel scientific function, or in other words, accessibility to transit station is positively associated with travel scientific function. And also there are some similar findings, but in studies by they showed that individuals living in subway station areas did not have significantly higher level of travel scientific function. And as we have discussed that this may be because the model they used, but for the limits of time, I will not discuss in detail. There are also some handful of studies on other psychological outcomes. For example, some focusing on cognitive responses, like travelers' acceptable distance and the time of walking to transit, and the intention to use public transit. But the number of studies is pretty limited. So finally, I would like to provide some discussion on the critical thinking of the current studies. I think there are several issues. The first one is a theoretical issue. While we argue that there are needs to particularly focus on TOD in Global South, but there are also still needs to integrate the study findings in different regions. And in this review, we generally found that the findings in Global North and Global South are generally similar. So maybe it's possible to integrate these findings, but we also found some unique findings, and this reminds us to caution the local context. But I think from a broader view, the treatment of geographical difference is actually an important theoretical challenge for both the TOD studies and even the whole transportation research. And the researchers generally adopt quite different views. One is a progressive view and assume that the Global South is a latecomer and will follow the same way of Global North. And some others, like Jennifer Robinson, maybe she would argue that we need to emphasize the importance of a local context and should not hold the general view to the findings from different regions. And also according to the policy mobility approach, maybe it's the importance of the, it is important to focus on the process of policy transfer. We would argue that the specialty of TOD in Global South should not be overstated or reckoned as pre-given, but needed to be demonstrated and overcome. It should not be just our originality of findings, but should to be proved. The second one is related to the methodological issue. I think we needed to include some new measures and methods, because most of the empirical studies are based on indicators such as accessibility or distance to transit station, or just as Rahman used, we classified the regions into TOD regions or non-TOD region. But I think future studies may need to incorporate some more detailed characteristics, such as the accessibility to destinations by transit, rather than just accessibility to transit station, and also the design of the TOD areas. For example, the first and last mile environment of accessing the transit, and also more rigorous design and more sophisticated methods are needed, like non-linear models and models based on longitudinal survey. Finally, I think there's some new topics maybe interesting for future studies. The first one in the gentrification theme, I think some topics studied by the literature of gentrification in general may be useful for us to go further. For example, the role of state in gentrification, the tactics adopted in the process of redevelopment, and also how the contribution of individual residential mobility to the population level gentrification. Also, the impacts of TOD on activity participation and social mobility may be an interesting topic. For the behavioral impacts, we would argue that maybe we can also examine impacts of TOD on residents' daily activity patterns beyond the travel behavior, and also the intra-household interactions, because many travel decisions are not made by individual per se, but maybe by the household and the unit, and also the process or mechanism of behavioral changes. Finally, I think about the psychological impacts, we can cover some other components, like the affective dimension of the travel well-being, and also the impacts at different time scales, and based on some new theoretical foundation, like the hedonic adaptation and the reference point. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Wang, and for this interesting presentation, and for the audience. And if you have question, you can unmute yourself and raise a question. In the meantime, I just have a quick question. And so, at the beginning, you talk about there are 4 connotations of these, right? So, thinking about the planning models and behavior and the kind of the policy and so on and so forth. So from your understanding of the literature, in the Global South, do you think the TOD, what's the primary goal of the TOD in the Global South among those connotations?
First, I think still the planning model is the dominant one, but I think there are also local differences. For example, in some of Chinese cities, they generally use like TOD and financial instrument to get the more land for urban development, and also try to finance the land development. And for example, and also like in Brazil, when we're talking about BRT, I think they generally focusing on the transportation policy. It's mainly used as a peripheral travel mode. Right.
Any other questions?
Hi, Professor Zhao. Can I ask one question?
Please.
So I am very interested in the topic of the gentrification of TOD. I actually encountered several studies like Professor Huang, Professor Cao, so identify that the implementation of TOD might not reduce car use. I think based on the research, based on his research in Charlottesville, so I'm very interested in the TOD issue in the global south. Do you think it's an issue of land value capture? As you just mentioned that most Chinese cities use TOD to grab value and try to use it as a capitalization method. And but do you think do you think there are similarities between gentrification issues of TOD and also residential dissonance issue in the United States? So how can we overcome this issue within TOD itself? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, I think first, maybe there are some different findings for whether TOD has induced gentrification, because the studies in global south is relatively much fewer. So the summary may be not robust. But for your question related to residential dissonance and also maybe gentrification as a social problem, I think this is mainly because that TOD, if it is a good land development model, it will attract more people to live here. So it certainly will have the risk of attracting richer people rather than the poor people. So even the problem is firstly is related to the social equity. The other one is related to residential dissonance, because some richer people, they live here, but they just want to hold a house property with increasing housing value, rather than just want to reduce their car use. But I think this is a difficult problem, because the local government usually want to, for example, finance the land development. So they have needs to let this area to the land value to increase, and this must attract the richer one. So I think that there are some inner contradictions, and the policies to overcome this problem is still need to be examined or to be explored. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Any additional questions for Professor Wang or MD Hamidur? Okay, so if there are no additional questions, and thank you very much, everybody, and for being here. And also, I want to thank Professor Wang and also Mr. Rahman again, for their wonderful presentation. And apparently, the TOD issues in Global South is just kind of an emerging topic. So hopefully, we are going to see more research in this area, and then, maybe after a decade, we can have more solid understanding about, the cause and also the impacts of the TOD in Global South, and also we can achieve the sustainable development and also the social equity among all the people. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to see you in the December webinar session, and if you are interested in our webinar, and please join as our friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Kyle. Bye.